Hi, this is Brenda Regal, and I'm creating a short video of this PowerPoint that I created called Budget is Policy. I'm using a program called Screenomatic that is a free download that you can find on the internet, and I'm hoping you'll consider using it for your PowerPoint presentation that you'll be making and uploading for this class in this particular module. Budget is policy. The information from this particular PowerPoint is from a book called The Bottom Line in Child Care and also from the textbook that you have. And we'll start out by asking the first question, why a budget? I think all of you probably have a budget at home, maybe formal or very informal, but you know about how much money coming in and what bills you need to pay, so you know the money that's coming in and the money that's going out. So budget basically provides us a way to understand, plan, and control our finances. I think it's very important to note that being able to manage a budget is a critical skill for a director. And if the director cannot manage a budget, then that program is probably going to be having some problems. I think it's also important to note that a director influences policy by the way they help and influence set up the budget process and the decisions that are made in determining that annual budget. And then a director can use that budget to guide policy through the year. So, for example, if the director feels that it's a priority to have the lobby redecorated or spruced up a little bit, or new materials put in, or new furniture, then that should be considered as putting that in as a line item on the budget for that particular year. If the director has no input or influence on developing a budget, then the director may take it on themselves to take money from the food budget to create or update the lobby that she feels is a priority for that particular year. So when we talk about setting up a budget, then we're talking about how budget is policy. Programs that really value having nutritious lunches or meals for their children with lots of fresh fruits and vegetables are going to spend more money on food. Programs that value their staff and keeping in their staff are going to spend more money on their staff and benefits for their staff. So we say over and over again that budget is policy, and whoever makes budget decisions is also making policy decisions and influencing how that program will be run throughout the year and coming years. I think it's also important to note that a child care is a business. And the way the money is managed defines what the organization does. The customers of this child care business are many and diverse. It's, of course, the families. It's also the governmental agencies. It's private, charitable agencies and foundations. Of course, the community and the employers of families. So these are the customers, and how you operate your program determined by the budget. And it's important that you know as much about your budget as you do about the children in your program. Who makes the budget? Well, the director usually makes the budget. In larger organizations, there may be a treasurer or committee, but without a doubt, a director should have influence on the budget process and the final budget. In smaller organizations, the director or the manager will, for the most part, be responsible for setting up or creating the budget. And then I think it's also important to have an accountant to do an audit throughout the year and also give you feedback on different ideas for keeping track of your cash flow and how you're managing your money and your budget and your finances throughout the year. The budget basically tells others what your plan is for the year, and sharing your budget with others helps them have a better understanding of what your plans are, not only for this year, but for years to come. A budget is a plan, it's a projection of how you think you're going to be spending your money. And what type of income you're going to be receiving for that particular year. It is a plan. It's not carved in stone, so it can be changed throughout the year, and you've probably done it with your budget at home too. So, for example, I may be out shopping and I may see that there's a great deal on blueberries, and I may decide to buy 40 or 50 pounds of blueberries to put in the freezer. And that may not be in my budget. But I do know that it eventually will work out because those blueberries will become part of make my food budget less when I need to think about buying blueberries in the wintertime. So I think it's important to remember that a budget is a plan and it can be changed. But I think it's also important to remember that their budgets are most useful when they're looked at as official documents and that you're not going to change them too much. You probably notice that with your own personal budget. If you change it too much, then eventually you might get into problems. So if you're going to have a budget, it's a way to manage your finances, so let's stick to the budget. But if you do have a budget, you need to make changes, then respect that budget and document the changes and why you made those changes. So when you create your budget for this class, do document why you decided to have those certain expenses and how you decided that that's how much money you were going to put in that particular line item. So respecting a budget is very important, and actually documenting changes to the budget that you created is better than creating a new budget every time you turn around. There are two sides to a budget. So we've talked about the income or the revenue. So you can predict what you hope you're going to have coming in. And you can also predict in your budget what you think you're going to be spending your money on. You do need to itemize those expenses for the year. And it's important to note that expenditures and income should balance. If one side changes, then the other should do so accordingly. So if a new business opens up down the street and you lose some of your children to that particular child care program, then your revenue is going to decrease. So then your expenditures are going to need to decrease too. There is a sample budget that will be helpful for you when you're creating your budget for this child care project. It can be found in Chapter 5. It's in Director's Resource 5.1. When you look at that, you can see how the budget is set up and the different line items. Please note the total income and total expenses are equal for the budget. Should be for your budget too for this. And when you put it into the PowerPoint, your budget may take 4 or 5 slides or maybe more. Please don't make it so little that it cannot be seen. Do create a budget that can be readily viewed on your PowerPoint. There's 2 different kinds of budgets that you're going to be creating for this class. One of them is a startup budget and the other is an annual operation budget. You have a startup budget because startup expenses are usually one-time expenses. And the problems that come up during startup are a little bit different and usually only come up during startup time when you're starting a new child care program or a business. But you do need to have your annual budget figured out too, so you will need that for your child care project because once the business is up and running and the child care opens its door, you need to know how you're going to be spending your money. Your textbooks provide some crude rules of thumb for planning your budget. Please note that your biggest expense is going to be about 70% on personnel. And the other percentages can vary a little bit, but when you're looking at your overall budget, like your textbook says, these are some crude rules of thumb for planning your budget. I think another important thing that you need to consider is your utilization factor. Utilization factor is how you use the slots or spaces allotted for children, how you maintain your enrollment, how you enroll children. So when you're running a program, there are going to be times when you will not have a child. So family may come in and tell you they're leaving. So you will be out without income for a week or two till you can get a new child into the program, unless you're very good at planning and have a wonderful waiting list, which usually sometimes happens, but usually not for new programs. I've stated here that an 85% utilization factor is appropriate for the first, is pretty significant for the first year of running a child care program. Your utilization factor will probably be lower than that, but we'll say 85%. So when you figure your budget, you can't say I'm going to have 10 children in my preschool classroom, and each one of them are going to be paying $100, so that would give me $1,000 a month. When you create your budget, you're going to predict a utilization factor. If you used 85%, then actually the money that you can predict coming in would be $850. So when you create your budget, please do not write that all of your spots are going to be filled and you're going to have money coming in for each one of the slots for your children that enrolled. Your utilization factor can also be influenced if you have a discounted rate for siblings. Some programs do offer a discounted rate for the second or third child, so that will also impact your utilization factor. So do remember to include a utilization factor when you're figuring your budget. And always remember it's better to under budget the income. And then if you make more money, then that's great. So predicting a lower income will help you in your budget. I think that we already talked a little bit about documenting and writing some notes to justify how you're spending your money. So you need to have some narrative in your budget, summarizing the reasons that you arrived at the figures you're using. So how are you paying your people and why are you paying them a certain amount of money? What types of fringe benefits are you giving to your staff? You also need to document and put some narrative in there about your professional fees and why you decided on the amount that you're using for your professional fees, as far as then of course supplies. Again, more information, add information to your budget and some narrative notes to your budget about occupancy cost, furniture, equipment, etc. So do not just put the numbers in there, but also in your budget include information about why you chose and how you arrived at those particular numbers. You also will include information about special events and other expenses. So do document and put notes about that. Then another thing you need to think about is adding information about your in-kind and donated goods and services. So you need to figure out how that's going to impact your budget and how that's going to be calculated into your budget. I know some of you put flooring or furniture. There's lots of different types of in-kind services that you can talk about. And that is the end. Thank you.